Hi, Maxicare members, and welcome to Maxi Life Wellness Fridays featuring nutrition in the digital world. This is another Maxicare offering for you because Maxicare wants you to live your best life by knowing how to eat right. I'm Patricia Bermudez. He's on your host for today. And even though it's raining, I tell you, I'm really just so happy to be with all of you to learn more about nutrition in this day and age, especially because this month we are celebrating Nutrition Month. Did you guys know that? I'm glad that I get to learn a lot of things through Maxicare. So it is Nutrition Month. I need to be more focused. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm looking forward to learning from this session's nutrition expert, registered nutritionist and dietitian, Joe Sebastian. To go. Let's officially kick off our Maxicare Wellness Fridays. Welcome to Maxi Life Wellness Fridays featuring nutrition in the digital world. Again, I am Patricia Bermudez. He's on your host for this event. Nutrition was first discussed from the books of the professionals, and now we can find it anywhere in the digital world with all the fads and the different types of diets right now. We have to ask how this has changed nutrition in terms of culture, accessibility, and trend setting. In this session, we will dive into the history of nutrition and its evolution, as well as how we have benefited and been harmed by the movement of nutrition in the digital space. And I'd love for you to meet our speaker. Our speaker is a fitness enthusiast, a social media influencer, and a certified health and wellness advocate. Having graduated from the University of the Philippines, Diliman, with a degree in community nutrition, her background will be so valuable in helping us learn and understand nutrition in the digital space so we can improve our eating habits. Let us welcome registered nutritionist and dietitian Joe Sebastian. Hi, Joe.
Hi, good afternoon, good gloomy-ish afternoon, guys.
Right,
Hello.
right. So normally when it's gloomy like this, Joe, I like to just, prop down and snack on
Yes.
something.
Yes.
Sometimes not always healthy, but I'm looking forward to your talk. Actually, it's such a unique topic, right? Nutrition and then digital age.
Yes. I love it actually because there's so much information we see on the internet, and it's really interesting to see how that impacts us or how we are seeing nutrition now. Like, what happened and why is this the information we're seeing, and how do we navigate through that? We're going to talk about that.
All right. Well, go ahead, Joe. Thanks so much in advance for all the information. Looking forward to being fed with great info on nutrition.
Sure. Thank you so much. All right, guys, let's begin our discussion today, nutrition in the digital world. As was said, my name is Joe Sebastian. I'm a registered nutritionist and dietitian. I love creating content on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, etc. But the reason why this topic is so interesting to me is because we do consume a lot of content now. A lot of our day, especially being at home, is from scrolling on the internet and also just watching videos that we often don't know how that impacts us in the long run as to what the information we're seeing is and how we start to incorporate that information to us, right? But we're going to discuss how nutrition specifically has evolved over the digital world and how we are now consuming nutrition information. So, with that, let's talk about nutrition in the digital world. All right. Before we get into that, we have to define nutrition because I think it's very important to give a definition to what we're discussing. Nutrition in the digital world. But what is nutrition exactly? Let's say that our dictionary definition of nutrition would definitely be the study of food and how it interacts with the body. So
Joe, can I ask you a real quick question? So
yeah,
you're just at the first part of your slide, and while I'm asking this question, maybe you can just adjust your audio a little bit just to make sure that we can fully hear everything that you're going to be sharing with us because it's so important. So you talk
okay. How
about
about that?
how
Can you
nutrition.
hear me now?
It's still a little muffled, but you've been talking about how nutrition is so important in this digital age. And it's true. I think we all need to be very cognizant of the fact that, times have changed and even nutrition has changed, but we all need to find the right information. And I'm glad that you're bringing it down to the level on what nutrition is. So, Joe, if I can hear your audio real quick.
Is it better? Should I remove my microphone? Is that better?
Much better. That's much better. So looking forward to the rest of the presentation.
Okay. All right, thank you guys. Anyways, let's get back to it. So, nutrition is the study of food and how it interacts with the body. Basically, what we do around nutrition is from when we were in college, for example, we study what happens when you eat an apple, what happens in your mouth, in your esophagus, in your stomach, when it gets to your intestines, where does it go, how is it used? That's pretty much how we study nutrition. One of my favorite definitions of nutrition is the science and art of nourishing the body properly. Because as much as we do discuss how nutrition is helpful for nourishing your body, something that's important to take note of is that it is also part of creating an art for ourselves, right? Like it is an art of how we connect with people through food, how we nourish ourselves, not just physically, but also mentally and socially. As the World Health Organization does define health as the complete mental, physical, and social well-being of an individual, right? So it's always important that we take into account that nutrition goes beyond just nourishing your body through food, but also nourishing your soul and your connection to others. So when we talk about nutrition, it is the science and art of nourishing the body properly, not just physically, but also how we make connections with others. So now let's go through a brief run through of the history of nutrition. This is going to be very brief because we don't have a lot of time to get into all of the details, but we'll try to go into some of the important parts and also see how information about nutrition has changed over time. So let's start with 300 BC. Now, the thing about nutrition, it's quite a new science. It's still young in itself, but the first notes of it was around 300 BC when Hippocrates said that diet is part of health. And the famous quote of "let food be thy medicine" by Hippocrates started around that time, right? So that was about the first notes of nutrition and learning about food in general. But we have to skip all the way to around 1700s where more recorded usage of nutrition and more learnings about food came to be. This was about 1700s. James Lind, so they were in the sea, they were on the ocean, and a lot of the sailors were starting to have painful bleeding gums. And what they saw from that was maybe there's something that's happening. And what James Lind did was they fed them citrus fruits, specifically lime juice. And they realized that that was probably a cure. So that was one of the first things they noticed of food being something helpful for our bodies and something that we can use for specific purposes. So this was actually scurvy, and vitamin C was something that was used to help cure or prevent it. Then we go all the way up to our 1800s, where Antoine Lavoisier, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but essentially he is the father of chemistry and nutrition. And around the 1800s was a time when they were starting to dabble in calorimetry, or starting to see how food gets burned, or the energy that's released when you're burning food, something like that. It's basically calorimetry, right? And they were starting to dabble into that. Apart from that, it was also in the 1840 when Justus Liebig started to find out the exact makeup of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And they started to discover that it was made of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and protein with nitrogen. So they started to find out more about the food and started to look into the specifics of what it could offer and the deeper connections of compounds and elements and all of those things. So apart from that, around the 1800s as well, they also discovered that digestion was more of a chemical process rather than a mechanical process, because they also discovered that the pancreas actually released a lot of nutrients that help digestion. So when we say it's a chemical process, there are actually enzymes that the body releases to help us digest and, of course, nourish ourselves. Now we jump into the 1800s as well. Of course, the carbohydrates, the fats, and the proteins were being more discovered, more understood. There was even a time when they started to see how plant proteins were actually a safe replacement for your animal-based proteins because they still gave you the same nutrients around something like that. They did an experiment and it showed that when they replaced your animal protein with beans of the same amount, they were still able to reap those benefits, right? And it was also in 1894 when the Atwater factors that we know as 4 grams of carbs, 4 calories per gram of carbs. 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories, 1 gram of protein is 4 calories, 1 gram of fats is 9 calories. So there's your Atwater factors, was something that was discovered by Atwater. So this was in the 1800s. Now let's jump into our 1900s. So this is the 1900s now, where vitamins and minerals came to be. We started to discover that. We started to discover vitamin A, vitamin D, and all of the B vitamins as well started to rise and started to become something that we knew about. Things like calories and all of the information about food that we see technically in books was discovered and searched about in the 1900s. But apart from that, there also came the rise of diets and, of course, all of this information that we see on the internet as well, that we weren't seeing on the internet yet. This was more magazine-based. In fact, the first sightings of diets came to be around the 1900s. In the 1930s, the grapefruit a day diet became something that was popular. In the 1940s, it became the cayenne cocktail, which is like a drink or a concoction with cayenne pepper and other things that were used for weight loss and for health. 1950s, the cabbage diet came to be, where people would create broths out of cabbage, and that would be some of the main source of food that they would be consuming. And then around the 1600s, or not 1600s, sorry, in the 1960s, my years, but the 1960s was when the point system from Weight Watchers came to be, where they have specific points for food items that you would be consuming, and you could only have a specific amount of points per day. So this was around 1960s when calories and point systems started to rise up slowly. Now we have the 1970s and the 1980s, where this was kind of the beginning of the low fat versus low carb battle that we still have today. So around the 1970s, I think there was a rise of heart disease and heart conditions. This is mostly in, of course, the United States. But what they saw was there was a rise of these conditions. And so they started to look at their dietary patterns, and they saw that there was a really big consumption of dietary fat. So the low-fat diet started to come in. We had Slim Fast, which was about a low-fat drink and all of these things. Low-fat became very popular at that time. And it was in 1980 when Dr. Atkins released his book called The Atkins Revolution, if I'm not mistaken, that he started to say that it was actually low carb. That was something that would help you best for weight loss. And so since everybody who was doing low-fat was all of a sudden shocked and surprised, yes, they were happy that they could finally have carbohydrates, or they would finally have fat sources like the bacon and the butter and the stuff that they weren't allowed to have in their low-fat diet, that they cheered and they were so happy about it. They were excited to have that change of diet or the change of information that they started to get. That's why there's a really big debate against the low-fat and low-carb diet around diets overall, is because the low-fat diet was something that people were following in order for them to protect themselves or to reduce the risk of heart disease, which was something that was gaining exposure over time. But when the low-fat came in, there was also a lot of low-fat products that also came in from the industry, and a lot of marketing and advertisements toward that. Low-fat products that didn't only have low fat, but were also higher in sugar and higher in a lot of other food items that you would not necessarily have in food items that actually had fat. So there was this big shift of products, which led them to think that maybe low carb was actually better. And then the spin-offs of the low carbohydrate diets came in, where it you got paleo, right? And you have so many other low carbohydrate spin-offs that came to be. And even until now, there's still a lot of debate in the communities of dieters that question if it's low fat or low carb, that is something that they have to follow, right? So now we're at the 2000s, or the 2000s, right? And we talk specifically about the early 2000s, which was when the rise of social media started to come, right? It was 2004 or 2005 when blogging started to become popular. Vlogs also came to be as YouTube rose, and all of these influencers started to slowly grow. Well, at the start, they were just people who were trying it out, people who had not major setups yet at home. With all they had were cameras and just that to post videos on YouTube, the brave ones at the beginning, of course. And as time went on, especially in 2009, when fast food became something that was more accessible because of the recession and all of these things, and in 2010, when Instagram came out, did we end up having the rise of influencers, or the rise of all of these social media platforms that had people with big followings who tended to share their life. And of course, when people share their life, we get very interested to know what they're doing, to want to know every single thing about them. Because celebrities felt like a far off reach, but having them in social media made them feel like regular human beings. And that allowed us to have that connection with them, that feeling of I can see their life, I know them, we can connect more to a lot of the things that are happening in their life. And that also related to their nutrition and their food, and we started being curious about what they ate, what time they woke up, their morning routines, and all of these things. And we started to follow that through social media to find out more about their life and how we could live the glamorous life that we saw online, right? There was this study that found that social media users are more likely to eat fruit and vegetables or snack on calorie-dense foods if they think that their friends do the same. So it's something that's very common for us, right? We go on social media, we check what people are doing, we check where they're going, and of course we kind of want to go there and do the same things as well. If somebody is eating at a specific restaurant, we want to try that. Seems like a good experience. Or if somebody is starting to work out, we feel inspired and motivated to start our journey as well on the fitness track. And because a lot of influencers started to rise, or people who shared their life were relatable, there was this feeling of belonging when you were doing the same thing that they were doing. For all of us, all we want to do or to feel is to feel like we belong. And that's definitely not a bad thing, because this world can make us really feel separated from each other. But because of this feeling of belonging, a lot of us changed the way we saw things in our life and started to want to follow the people that we saw online to feel like we were part of that group. And people felt closer together, but also so much more far apart when it comes to the internet, right? But belonging came to be. And so did the rise of wellness and diet culture. Because we all wanted to belong and we all want to feel like we are part of a movement, the wellness and diet culture industry started to come up or boom even more. Of course, actually, it was very much further before, where it started around, like we said, it was the 1930s where the grapefruit a day diet came to be. But essentially, around this time, it grew even more. Apart from growing just to have from followers and from all of these diets, there was also the growth of products that could be used for advertising by influencers or by people with a large following, so that their followers would buy into the products that they were selling, right? Wellness and diet culture is something that came to be as everybody wants to be healthy, everybody wants to feel good and feel like they are accomplished and all of these things. And we often feel that accomplishment when we're taking care of ourselves, right? And wellness and diet culture tends to feed off that and tells us that this is what you have to do to be healthy. This is the diets you have to follow. This is what you have to do to live like me. It's kind of what we try to get from a lot of influencers, especially before in the earlier times of Instagram. Because now, if you go through Instagram and TikTok and YouTube, a lot of people are more real about what they post. A lot of people don't really mind if they share their mistakes and things, because now that's what gets likes and followers, because it shows the authenticity that we didn't have at the early ages of social media. And diet culture is something that came to be when we were only seeing the good parts and the highlights of what was shown through people's lives. The tendency was only to show salads or foods that they thought were healthy or clean and things like that. But they wouldn't show when they ate other foods. So it made us feel like, oh no, they never eat burgers. I don't think I'm allowed to eat burgers. Or we would feel bad if we weren't able to fit or to get the food that our favorite influencers were able to have. But let's take a look at what diet culture is exactly. Before we jump into that, we have to define diet versus dieting. See, as well as nutrition being something that evolved over time, definitions also evolved over time, specifically the term diet. When we say diet, this is usually all the food and drink that you consume habitually. So anything you drink, anything that you eat, if you consume that habitually, that's part of your diet. So that you as an individual, that's your diet. Let's say my diet is made up of 3 meals and 1 snack or something like that. That's my diet. And now we use that term as a form of saying that we want to lose weight, which is when dieting comes in, or restrictive diets often used for weight loss. Now, when you hear somebody, oh, I'm on a diet, it usually means they're trying to lose weight or they're trying to lose fat, right? Or, diet ako, the kind of thing that we always tend to say, usually refers to us cutting down specific food items or cutting an amount of foods. So the definition over time of diet has changed. And when we say dieting today, we do mean the restrictive diets often used for weight loss or often used to change your body. But let's talk about diet culture. So I'm not sure if you've heard of this or if you are familiar or aware, but there is a culture around food and dieting that we tend to not see, especially on social media. Because a lot of the times diet culture is something that is normalized and that is pretty much just culture in general. Well, it is a culture and it evolves over time and it's something that we take with us. So what is diet culture? Diet culture is a belief system that values weight, shape, and size over well-being. And you can see this a lot because we do have a lot of weight bias in our society, in our culture. But it's a belief system that says that your weight, your shape, and your size is something that you have to value or something that offers any information about your worth as a human being. And so we all started to become very conscious about how we looked, very conscious about our weight, very conscious about our shape, our size. And the tendency was we prioritized this over our well-being. The thing is, weight loss isn't always equated to health because sometimes the way we lose weight is very unsustainable and can actually lead to more problems in the future, right? But the value that diet culture put on losing weight and changing how your body looked created a very different view of food. Then food started to become something that we fear, something that we're afraid of. All of these diets started to pop in where science-based nutrition was put to the side. And it was now focused more on testimonial-based information. What is my favorite influencer doing? What is this celebrity eating to prepare for this role and all of these things? And you can see a lot of those YouTube videos. And you can see a lot of transformation videos as well. If you look through YouTube and Instagram and even TikTok, you see a lot of that information of how I lost 20 kilos in one month and all of these things. And it becomes something that we focus on. Diet culture is promoting health and it simplifies it into weight loss. It simplifies health into one thing, which is losing weight. It cuts it down into that sole meaning of if you lose weight, you are healthy. And if you gain weight, then you are not.
right? And that's what we are now feeling, that if we eat specific foods, we're automatically unhealthy. And if we eat other foods, we're automatically healthy. And there's this now conversation of what is good food and what is bad food to eat. So nutrition has changed over time because the culture that we have around dieting has changed as well. And something that we really can't separate is our relationship with food, body. Because a lot of the times our relationship with our body dictates how much we can or can't eat. And that's how nutrition has changed, where nutrition has become something focused on aesthetics rather than focused really on health. So now we focus on the scale, we focus on measurements, we focus on good foods and bad foods. We try these diets, these pills, these supplements that are introduced to us by social media, by advertising and marketing of companies. So it's really interesting because our definition of food also changes based on the diet that we have, where people would say, I'm eating clean. And usually when they say clean eating, this is not eating processed foods and stuff like that. But they would also promote protein powder, which is a processed food. Now, I'm not saying that this is bad food or good food or anything like that, but I am saying how the definition of food really changes per diet. There are exceptions to specific diets, which makes us question its foundation as a diet and for our health at all, right? Diet culture now tells us things about having to get ready for a bikini season, trying a new water diet, losing 10 pounds in 1 week. Sugar becomes a whole food group. Cereals, specific cereals becomes a craze. We now have laxative teas that are very often used. You also have demonizing of carbohydrates or demonizing of fruits as well. And you can see this everywhere. And because there's so much information from vlogs to blogs and TikTok videos and Instagram photos, it can be so hard to navigate this, to navigate the space. It's very recently that now we see a lot of professionals or healthcare professionals in the field starting to talk about the information that they know and starting to give us the science-based information that they have. Right? But diet culture is something we see a lot and something that we tend to normalize. If you're not on a diet, it starts to feel like, oh, I don't belong. So we start wanting to go on our next diet and our next craze in order for us to feel like we have that belonging. But social media is really about belonging and connecting. And one way we can all connect through is food. Like we said, food is the science and art of nourishing the body, and also understanding how we can connect through the food we eat. There's also that connection of wondering and wanting to know what everyone else is eating. I often get a lot of comments and questions asking me, what do you eat every day? How can I look like you and all these things? And I want you to remember that even if we all ate and worked out the same way, we would all look different because everybody is different. And when we talk about diet culture, we also have to talk about how disordered eating habits have become normalized because of diet culture, because of the culture that we live in surrounding food around weight rather than towards promoting health promoting behaviors, right? What do we mean by this? What is disordered eating habits? So we have a spectrum of eating behaviors where one side is intuitive eating, also considered normal eating, and then you have your eating disorders on the other side. When we say intuitive eating, this is when you eat when you're hungry, you view food as something that is pleasurable, but also something with purpose of satisfying yourself. There is positive or neutral body image, so you don't necessarily hate your body or want to change it, but you do see it as something that helps you with life or is something that is there for you to help you experience life. Somebody I talked to before said that this thing we have here, this is our physical shell that allows us to experience life. So that's our body. It also includes a variety of healthy foods with space for fun foods. And usually when we are eating intuitively, we don't use our emotions to regulate our intake. Well, eating is inherently an emotional act. Intense emotions wouldn't regulate our intake. And of course, there's also exercise for joy rather than exercise as punishment or trying to change your body. Which leads us all the way to the other side of the spectrum, which is eating disorders like anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, and other eating disorders. So in the middle is disordered eating patterns or disordered eating habits that we tend to normalize. What do we mean by normalize? Because a lot of us tend to feel like we have to do this, or it's a healthy way of seeing food. For example, restricting food just so that you can change your shape and weight, especially for a specific event that's happening, right? Not responding to your hunger cue. So I feel hungry, but I think I'll just chew gum or just drink water because I don't need to feel hungry. Or when we eat to regulate our emotions, which is the emotional eating and the stress eating. Compulsive eating or overeating, also closely related to binge eating. Then you have negative body image. You have limited or inflexible food intake, which is, oh, I can't eat that because it's going to break my diet, or I have to skip this whole event because it's going to ruin my diet. And we are very stuck to our rigid rules, and there's very firm rules. And also exercising so we can burn extra calories for our meals later on. There's also a lot of things you see on videos and information you see from your influencers with how they promote health and promote eating. Oh, you ate something like cake, you just burn it off. And then it becomes something that is normalized in our culture, something we feel like we have to do. When food is something that's there for your body to help you and to take care of you, and exercise should be done out of enjoyment and celebration of your body, not out of punishment, right? But the spectrum of eating behaviors is something to look into, as a lot of the diet culture, wellness culture things we hear about falls towards creating that disordered relationship with food. So it's always important to question the information we are getting and how we can fit that into our lives. Is it sustainable? Is it something that's going to make me obsessed with food and make me live to eat rather than eat to live in that sense? So research such as the study that we talked about a while ago, how social media saw that we tend to follow what our friends do or what behaviors that we see online are. And we are influenced by online perception about how others eat. Something very important to remember is that the digital world, social media, only shows you about 10 to 20% of somebody's life, even if they say they are showing all of what they do and everything they can. It's really only showing you a very, very small part of their life. And we tend to make that their whole life, and we don't see everything. So the promotion of positive health messages across social media, which are focused on promoting healthy choices and non-restrictive relationships with food in the body, could really help us nudge ourselves into the direction of positive decisions around food and how we eat. Right? So it's always important to check the messages that we see online, because social media is just a highlight reel of a lot of people's lives, and we can easily want our lives to look exactly like that, right? And that's how nutrition has changed over time in the digital space, is that instead of becoming focused on science-based evidence that we see from the books, now we are focused on testimonials and what other people are doing, trying to pattern ourselves as close to that because we see that they're having results. And now we focus on trying to mimic that exactly, hoping we would have or benefit from the exact same things. So I want you to remember that health goes beyond just nutrition, and that we always only see a very small part of somebody's life when it comes to the internet. When it comes to health, there is also food quality and stability. There's also education. There's also your environment. There's also quality healthcare, community. There's so many more aspects to health, simply not just focused on what we eat. So when we think about health, remember that accessibility and so many factors are related to it. And even if we ate the same way as everybody else, we would still reap different results because everybody is different. And that's what nutrition is about, knowing that your body is something you have to learn, or relearn, and something you have to work with, right? So to simply just sum up everything in a way, remember to focus on nourishment and not restriction. Nourishing yourself physically, but also mentally in the information that you're able to get, and also the people you surround yourself with, and not restricting yourself to only sticking to something that everybody else is doing and is working for them, but is not working for you. Nourish yourself, not restrict. So hopefully that this whole conversation was helpful in any way in understanding how we are able to view social media and how we digest information that we tend to see, but allowing us to understand how our bodies are very, very important. And we're gonna head into a lot of questions coming on soon. But if there are any questions that you aren't able to answer today, you can always check out my Instagram and my email for anything else like that. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope it was informative. And if you raise any questions, I'm ready.
Well, glad that you are, Joe, because I even personally have some questions, but I'm going to leave it to another expert to ask those. Thanks so much, Joe, for that really interesting session. We did learn a lot, and I'm sure that will bring about more of this conversation that we will have as we bring in someone who will facilitate this Q&A. She is a private practicing nutrition dietitian at Just Nutrition and entrepreneur owner of the Good Basket Cebu, a local healthy grocer. She is a food as medicine advocate with a background in functional medicine, as well as a culinarian from the International Culinary Arts Academy in Cebu. Her lifelong love affair with food brought her to her career path, dabbling with both the art and science of food. She was also formerly a food blogger with a blog called Babe for Food. I love that. And a health column contributor for Sunstar Weekend magazine. So let us welcome with a thunderous applause. I don't know if you guys got that. There's like really loud thunder. Thunderous applause for our registered nutritionist and dietitian, Justin Go. Hi, Justin. Who will be with us shortly. I'm sure she's going to be jumping in on this call again, coming from Cebu, and we will be going over some of the questions. Justin, are you back? Hey, there you are. Hi.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm here. I hope my audio and my internet connection is good. It suddenly started getting unstable. I'm so sorry about that.
Oh, no problem at all. But Justin, I also would love to hear from you on what your take is on this particular topic.
It's really interesting. I hope everyone finds it really interesting, because even for myself, it really is. I love how Joe revealed to us, the evolution of knowledge over the years. It continues to grow and evolve. Nutrition is a young science. It's young and the continues to develop and evolve and change. So we continue time. So I think we all have to stay open about the things that we could learn about food. But ultimately, we see that food is really much more complex than we think. A lot of things are involved in food and just our health. It includes our social relationships, and even our mood, our mental well-being. So yeah, that's how important food is for all of us.
Are there really foods that you should be avoiding or a diet that you should be adapting when you struggle with any kind of mental health issue?
I think when it comes to mental health and food, it goes more into your relationship with food rather than specific food items. While there are some studies on maybe the relationship of what you eat and how that impacts your mental health, specifically gut health, is becoming a bigger area of study, a bigger scope of study on its relation to mental health. I think the more important thing to focus on is your relationship to food, where it's about asking, why am I eating these foods, or why am I restricting myself to specific foods? Because a lot of the times, mental health can come from your relationship with food, or right, those kind of situations can come from
your relationship with food and how you are treating food. Are you treating it as something that you're afraid of, or something that you can't have, or something that you have to earn? Or are you treating it as something that is there to help you reach your goals and all of these things? But if you're looking for specific foods, there are slowly becoming studies on gut health related to mental health. So I think we could work on gut health as something we could focus on moving forward when it comes to mental health. But still working on information for that one specifically. But yeah.
So while we wait for Justin to come back on, I just want to stay on that a little bit, because even this digital sphere has a lot to do with mental health anyway. And since we're talking about nutrition, how do you deal with it? Like if you're struggling, let's say with anxiety, I know a lot of people are, even go as far as depression. You talk about the relationship to health. Do we now eat food that will just make us happy, or still stick to a diet that's more science based? It might not taste good, but it's really a good brain food.
That's an interesting question. First, I do have to say that a healthy diet involves food that you feel tastes good and you enjoy, because that's a really big factor. And of course, healthy food doesn't always have to be bland or boiled only or just steamed. There's so many different ways to cook food now that you can still enjoy the health benefits and have a delicious meal. But I think when it comes to let's say, what should you prioritize in mental health? I think you should first prioritize digging deeper into what is causing all of these struggles that we have. Because as much as we can eat specific foods that are, let's say, brain boosting and things like that, if we're not working internally as well and simultaneously with understanding how a lot of factors impact our life, we're constantly going to keep coming back to food as our coping mechanism, as our emotional what do you call that? Like our emotional help and thing that we hold on to, right? And as much as eating for emotions isn't necessarily a bad thing, if it's the only thing we do, then that's something we have to address or something we have to look into.
All right, I'll bring in Justin back again to have our Q&A. How are you, Justin? Go ahead and ask the next questions. But thanks, Joe.
Hello, I'm back. Thank you so much, Miss Patricia. Okay, I hope I'm all good now. So, proceeding to the next question. How are you so far with Miss Joe? Are you ready for more of the questions?
Yes, I'm ready. Hopefully, let's
Great.
see. Depends on the question. I'm just kidding. Okay.
I see several questions here about asking about how to improve the diet of teens. Like somebody's asking about how to help a 14 or 16-year-old improve their diet.
Oh, okay. So I don't have kids. So I'll just be basing it off of what I've learned or what I've been told from like school and stuff like that. And what I also see with like my nephews and things like that. When they're a teen, a lot of it goes into habit building from a young age and also exposing them to your habits as well. I think the most important thing is exposing them to realness and connection, because especially if they're a teen, they're more likely to be closed off and getting a lot of their information from friends and social media, right? Because it's really hard to regulate the use of that. So I think it's really important to start as a teen, talking to them and giving them the value of food and nutrition and respecting and taking care of your body. Because when I was a teen, that's when my disordered eating habits started. That's when I started to stop eating, to restrict myself, and all of these things. And I got a lot of my information from the internet and closing myself off from my family. So I think it's important to try your best to connect with them, to get into their habits and to understand a lot of the things that they're going through so that you can help them best with their eating habits. What about you? What do you feel?
Sounds like a really good answer, actually. It is true, that it should actually start with our parents too, with how they talk to us about food and the habits that they show us as well. So that's also really important for our parents to supposedly be the role models for our eating habits. So yes, if we have parents here, I'm sure we have a lot of parents here. So I hope this is something you'd learn to maybe think about on how you behave around food and how you talk about food in front of your kids or with your family, because it definitely has a big impact. All
Yes.
right. So we actually have a lot of questions here. I'm just gonna go through them as much as we can. So the next one would be, how can we better manage our emotional eating habits?
Okay, so I love this question just because I deal with a lot of individuals actually. Like the scope of work that I usually do is around individuals who struggle with disordered eating. But so emotional eating, first you have to understand that there's many reasons why you eat, right? It's not just to have energy or just to have fuel. Something that we've talked about as well is there's also social connections, and comfort even comes from food. But it's always important to ask yourself, is my only coping mechanism food? Is that the only thing I turn to when I get emotions or feel emotions? Because if it is, then it's time to question or ask yourself, okay, what can I do to help myself cope with emotions, or what are these emotions I'm actually feeling, right? What are these, and how can I address them better? It's always not necessarily a negative thing to eat emotionally, right? It can be something that you do, but the state you're in when you are going to eat should ideally be in a calm state, so that at least we're able to ground ourselves through that session. This behavioral psychologist that I follow, she said, try just practice. This is just a practice that you don't have to do, but you can try it. It's just to hold your heart and then to breathe 10 times deeply. And then after that, ask yourself, what do I really need right now? If you want to eat and go have a snack, sure. But at least you're in a little bit more of a calmer headspace, that when you make those food choices, there's something that aren't regulated completely by emotions. And then later address that emotion. What was it? And how can I further dig into that, so that emotional eating doesn't become your only coping mechanism? So yeah. Thanks.
Wow, what an awesome answer. What an awesome tip. Yeah, that's really interesting, and what also caught me about your presentation was about when you showed the spectrum of eating behavior, was that?
Yeah.
Spectrum of eating behavior, yeah. So it really shows us, um, the wide range of, I mean, the levels of how we actually eat. And yeah, it's great that we should actually try to, pause and think before we eat. So that's an awesome tip, to actually just pause and take a few breaths and really think, am I really hungry? Why do I want to eat this? So
Yeah.
yeah, guys, it really starts there. It starts with your why, and how are you feeling? And do I really have to eat this certain food just because I'm feeling this way? Will it really make me feel better afterwards? So we really have to think before we eat.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, one of my favorite things about that whole thing is when you have to ask yourself, what do I really need right now? Because what if it's actually that you need to scream into a pillow, or maybe you need to talk to somebody you're close to, right? Because our tendency is to think, oh, this food makes me feel comfort. But every single time I feel this emotion, I go through the same patterns again and again, and it hasn't helped me over time. I still come back to it. So it's always important to ask yourself, okay, what do I really need right now that could help me in the long run with my relationship with food? But yes, definitely important to think.
Yes, exactly. And like what you said, food should not be our only coping mechanism when we're not feeling as good about ourselves. So yeah, I guess it really starts with, being familiar with yourself, getting to know yourself better, and that will really help with your relationship with food as well. So we have several more questions. Can
Yes.
we? I'm not sure if we can accommodate everyone, but we will definitely try with the time that we have. So let me check. Several questions are asking about intermittent fasting. How
Mm.
is it? related to nutrition?
Okay,
Yeah, I
well,
guess that's the
um,
question.
the most common question that we get. I'm sure you get this question a lot as well. And I won't go too deep
Definitely.
into it because I feel like, there's a lot of people who can also explain it in different ways. But I think the main thing that I usually say when somebody wants to try it or somebody wants to do it is to ask yourself, how will this impact me in the long run? And how will it impact my relationship with food? So I'm also somebody who has dabbled in a lot of the dieting trends and things that we hear about online, and I've done intermittent fasting as well. And somebody who has come from a lot of restriction. Intermittent fasting made me be very, very hyper focused on food and time to the point where it was 11:59 and I felt like, oh, I can't eat yet. I have to have one more minute. And then it's just like, it created a lot of anxiety around food, which can also later lead to emotional eating or even become a habit of binge eating, right? So it's always important to ask yourself in anything towards nutrition or maybe even anything in life is to ask yourself, how is this impacting my relationship with myself, my relationship with food? And is it something I can keep up for the rest of my life? Because flexibility is so important. How about you? I wanna hear your answer when people ask you about intermittent fasting.
Well, you pretty much answered it, but basically, what I usually say is, intermittent fasting doesn't actually tell you what to eat, it only tells you when to eat. So it's not actually a diet, it's just a method of it's a method of eating. It's how you eat, but it's not about what you eat. So definitely, it can also lead people to not be as mindful about their food choices because they think that they can just eat anything as long as it's within the eating window. So yeah, since it doesn't tell you what you're supposed to eat, then you wouldn't really know what the right food you should be getting.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
like helps you a bit, but it doesn't answer a lot of the questions that you still might have around nutrition. So yeah,
Yeah.
for
So
sure.
ultimately it just boils down to calorie deficit. It just restricts your calories throughout the day. But we do know that nutrition and our health doesn't just rely on calorie deficit or
Yes.
restricting calories, right? So health is definitely much more than just calories, counting calories. So we also have another interesting question. I think that's relatable for all of us. Someone's asking, Miss Lorna is asking, we have been working from home for more than a year now. What can you advise to us to keep us healthy through proper nutrition, considering we have very limited movement? So something
Okay.
about, yeah, movement.
Oh, is this for about exercise or um, well, if it's about let's like okay, let's see, let's just break it down into like the two parts of like nutrition and exercise working from home. Um I do believe a big part of nutrition is really accessibility of food. And we always have to remember that that's why we can't always have the same diet as somebody because their accessibility to food is different from us. Like a lot of the celebrities and influencers that you see are um to probably have a wider array of food to choose from or are able to have different access to food. So when we compare our diet to theirs, it can be very heartbreaking or it can stress us out and we feel like we have to focus on those organic and superfoods and all of these things. So at this time, I feel like whatever food is available to you right now, whatever you can access will probably be the best food for you at this moment. And if you're just mindful of, okay, at least try to get vegetables and try to get fruits if I can, then you're definitely doing what you can for your body. In terms of movement, I feel like we can always try to move around the house if we can. It doesn't have to be exactly exercise. Like you don't have to really set up a whole time for exercising at the gym or even somewhere at your house. Even simply moving every 30 minutes or 1 hour while you're working at home, just walking around can already be a big step towards health, right? And just start with that and then slowly create maybe 5 minutes a day to movement and then 10 minutes a day to joyful movement. So just take it slowly and always consider what can I do or what am I willing to do right now so that I can help myself reach my specific health goals. So yeah. How about you? How's life in quarantine and what have you been doing for your health?
Definitely I'm trying to be as mindful as I can be about my movement and about the food that I eat, because I've also experienced COVID. So after that, it really also gave me a heightened awareness about how I'm really, living my life. So we tend to get carried away by work and stress and being busy. So it's really important, to make our health a priority through nutrition and movement and stress management and good quality sleep. So yeah, it all sounds so basic, but it's harder. It's actually hard to do
Yeah.
if we don't, if we're not really as intentional about prioritizing it. So priority is key.
Yeah, I
We
think
really have to see these
I
things
love
as a
what you said.
priority for us to work
w-
on.
with like you question how you live your life, like kind of thing, like not in like a negative way, but I think that's an important thing for all of us, is to question how what we're focusing on in life. Like, are we always just focusing on the next diet, the next trend, or are we focusing on the best long-term way to nourish ourselves, what feels good, what our body likes and dislikes, right? It's always around food, or is it centered around making connections with individuals? Because that's also a big part that we tend to block off when we're so focused on nutrition and health and all of these things. We forget that life is so much more than we move. So I love how you said that you like rethought how you were living your life. And I was like, I do the same thing every day.
Right. It's so true, and it's also about sustainability, like what you said, we work with whatever is most accessible to us, but we also have to remember if, or have to keep in mind if what we are doing is sustainable for us. And of course, we really want to think more long term, especially about our health, because who knows, there might be another pandemic in the future, hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
But we really just have to, prepare ourselves. Yeah. We're so done with COVID, I hope.
Yes.
I just really hope it goes away already. Yeah. So, again, we have many more questions. Here's another one I think that you'd like as well. And I also get this question a lot too. So, is cheat day good for dieting?
Okay. So, like, I feel like if it's a good, like, just in a relationship, right? I always consider it like, okay, just think about it as your relationship with somebody. If it was good, if it was fun, if it was sustainable, if it was something you trusted, you wouldn't have to cheat, right? So, in when it comes to diets, I feel like if you have to cheat, it's probably not a fun or good diet for you, because you have to have days where you feel free, or you have to have days for those. And also it promotes a whole mentality that there's good food and bad food, and that you have to earn your way to having those specific foods, right? So it comes into the mentality of a cheat day, and I don't promote it just because I've struggled with that and all of those things. So it's always important to remember that foods can be enjoyed all the time. And if you only have one life, and let's say you don't make it to the weekend, were you really going to put all of the foods you're going to enjoy on that day? Or you can spread it out and allow yourself to enjoy and live every day. It doesn't have to be every day you eat the cheat day foods, but every day you eat something you enjoy and are satisfied with, because that's how life will allow it to be, something like that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's nice. Celebrate life, right? Every single day, celebrate life
Yes.
with your food choices, with your decisions. Yeah, that's, it's the same thing I would say as well to my clients. I'd rather not call it a cheat day. I'd rather call it a treat meal or a treat day. Like, actually more of a treat meal, because for me it's really not, no, there's no point in restricting yourself, right? Because it, like you said, it only leads to an unhealthy relationship with food and yourself and later on. So we really shouldn't be restricting ourselves, and you deserve to enjoy eating and enjoy food, but
In life.
still be mindful of what serves you best, right?
Yeah.
It's totally fine to eat ice cream, cake, or whatever if it makes you feel good, if it helps you enjoy the moment, celebrate with family, loved ones. But also think about, how much you're eating if the amount that you're eating still serves you in a good way. So yeah,
Yeah.
we wouldn't also want to keep cheating on ourselves. Nobody wants cheaters.
Yes. No.
So we're running out of time. I think we can accommodate just one more question. I think that's important for everyone to hear as well. I mean, the answer to this. So let me look for it. Okay. It's something about. Okay, hold on. I lost it. I was looking at it earlier.
Ooh, okay, I'm excited for this last question. It's something we are searching for. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm excited.
Okay. All right. So, do you have any recommendations like websites or apps for the nutrition list for
Oh.
counting the calorie intake? But I would also like to rephrase this question as where can we get the best information or the best sources for information on health and nutrition?
Oh, okay. I think it's always important to check first to check what the source is that you're getting the information from if you're seeing it online, right? Even if it's a social, especially if it's an influencer, but even if it's an influencer who is a professional in that field, it's always important to check as well if they're a credible source, right? And then move on from there to see, okay, what are they talking about and where did they get their information? That's also something important to ask yourself when you're getting information from there. For books, for me, you can read the Nutrition Through the Life Cycle if you want to. That's fun. But if you want to work on your relationship with food, the books that helped me were Just Eat It. I forgot the author, and also Anti Diet. Just if you're focusing on your relationship with food, that's a good thing. For let's say for apps, I think it's important to work for example, for calorie counting apps, as much as you can use that to track your calories, usually the estimate of how many calories you need is usually very off because they usually give you the same for every single person. While it's a great way for you to be familiar with your food, the moment you start to become obsessed with it or start to feel like every single calorie matters the most, then that's when I would wean off it. But definitely, play around social media, look for your R&Ds and your doctors who might be dabbling in, information because content creation is something so big. But always, of course, check out what they're citing, what are their sources to know as well if that information they're saying is credible, right? So how about you? What are your favorite sources of information?
Well, I usually follow fellow colleagues like you, of course, and also doctors who talk about nutrition a lot, like Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Neil Barnard, nutritionfacts.org. Those are really good sources, in my opinion. But the most important thing, like you said, is really to still check on that person's statements if they are actually credible, if they're citing credible sources as well. So yeah, don't just rely on YouTube or influencers or whatever you read online. It's always best to um, look. I mean, look up to professionals, especially in this area, because it's about our health.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you so much, Joe, for answering
Thank
all the
you.
questions. Those were really awesome answers. And I know there are still a lot of questions, but in the interest of time, hopefully we can answer that maybe in another session like this. There's definitely a lot to talk about with food and nutrition. So, thank you again. And let me just bring back Miss Patricia He's on.
Hey, thanks so much, ladies. That was such an enlightening session. Just listening in to both of you, both experts, and just exchanging information like that really is so beneficial to all of us. But of course, before we let you go, I know, Justin, you kind of gave your final message. You want to just add to that as, a final takeaway for all of our Maxicare members? And then I'll ask Joe.
Right. Thank you. All right. So, with everything that we've heard today about nutrition, I hope everyone realizes that, our food choices are the most important decisions we make each day because we eat more than once a day, right? So, it's really important. So, that's it. That's it for me.
Thanks for that great reminder. Now I'm going to have to think of dinner and what to eat and make a good choice. Joe?
I just want to say that you only have one body and you only have one life. So focus on taking care of it and nourishing it. And remember that you always deserve to eat because you're alive and food is delicious.
Food is delicious. Thank you so much, ladies. Thank you, Justin, and thank you, Joe. That was a really great session. And it's a valuable experience for all of you Maxicare members today. To our attendees, thanks so much for participating in that Q&A and being so engaged. And to our Maxicare members, we now would like to ask you and invite you to take a few moments after this to share your feedback after this event. And we're sharing the link on the chat and the QR code that you see on that side of your screen. Of course, your feedback would be most appreciated. Now, we are ready to announce before you go the winners of our raffle draw. Remember that I said that we'll have one winner who will receive a laptop bag, one winner who will receive a really useful foldable umbrella, and another winner who will get a mini clutch bag. The Maxicare team will get in touch with you in claiming your prizes. And here are our winners. Let's take a look at their names. Natasha Renee Laksamana. Congratulations to you for winning that wonderful laptop bag. The umbrella goes to Irene Canlas of Marriott Hotel Manila. Nice, I love that. And Marty Rapadas from BPI gets our mini clutch bag. Congratulations to all of you. Now, here are two real quick poll questions before you guys go. And the first question always asks you, and it's something that you need to ask yourself too. Do you really want to live your best life? Remember that this session is all about nutrition, eating well, making the right choices. I know you still had a lot of questions about nutrition, but at the end of the day, it's a question that you need to ask yourself. Do you want to live your best life? Because if you do, then you have to make the right nutrition choices. So I'm guessing that it's a positive. It's a yes. Thank you so much for being participative in that first question. But here, the second question is equally important. This is where we ask you which topics or activities would you like to see in other Maxicare Wellness Fridays, improving your eyesight and taking care of your eyes. You know, do you guys have been looking at the screen too much? We'll talk about that. How to be a productive work from home employee, taking care of the lungs. What about diabetes, diagnosis, treatment, and management? Good topics to watch out for, and I'd like to know which ones really resound well for all of you. Pare-pareho tayo ng gusto. Improving your eyesight and taking care of your eyes. So watch out for my announcement in just a short while. But in case you guys want to be able to share your experiences and what your takeaways are from this discussion on nutrition in this digital space and age, of course, please do share it on your social media and use the hashtags Live Your Best Life and hashtag Wellness or Maxicare Wellness Fridays. You can also tag them on Facebook at Maxicare Healthcare Corporation and on their IG at Maxicare Healthcare with the Maxicare Health and Wellness IG as well. Don't forget to also subscribe to their YouTube channel where you'll see chock full of information on really great topics that involve your health and in different aspects as well. To learn more about Maxicare's products, do visit www.shop.maxicare.com.ph. And of course, you can also send them a messenger on their FB Messenger. And if you have questions about their Wellness Fridays, please send an email to maxicare@maxicare.com.ph. So this is the part where I announce to you that the next Maxicare Wellness Fridays will be on August 6th, and it will be at 5 p.m. Put it on your calendars. So because it was something that everyone was asking about, we will have a talk about taking care of your eyesight with the title Seeing 2020 and 2021. And this will be with cataract and comprehensive ophthalmologist Norman Fajardo. The QR code for this registration is being flashed on your screens right now, so make sure you register early. That ends our event for this evening. Thank you so much for being with us. We hope that you enjoyed and you were able to take away meaningful information about nutrition and your health. And please stay safe, stay dry, and have an enjoyable weekend, everyone. Thanks again, and have a great wonderful dinner. And we know that with Maxicare, you all can live your best life.